Hey, it's Ace, and if you haven't heard, the brand new Ace at Large podcast comes out every Thursday. And what the Ace at Large podcast is built around these days is the idea that you are not alone. Whatever you may be going through, whatever you may be dealing with, you are not alone. And what we need for the podcast is you. We need your stories, your ideas, your concepts. Tell us how you overcame something. Tell us what you dealt with in life and how you conquered it, because the idea is what you've dealt with in the past is going to make it easier for someone else to deal with whatever it is they might be going through. And that's something special. So you've got all the information down here below me on the screen. Contact me. Tell me about your story. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about what you've overcome. And we'll see if we can't provide others with the help that they need. All right. It's the Ace at Large podcast, available every Thursday. And I would love to hear from you.
This is the Radio Button Network. And this is the new Ace at Large podcast. Ace at Large podcast. Now, your host, Ace.
Well, this is a battle. We've talked about it before. Whatever it is that you're experiencing, whatever you're going through that brings you here to the Ace at Large podcast every week, you're fighting. It's a battle. I'm fighting. It's a battle. That's why I'm here. This whole thing started, if you're not familiar, when you just kind of discovered the Ace at Large podcast. This version started after the death of my daughter, and I was overwhelmed by the love and affection and devotion and the uplifting that I got from members of the Ace and TJ radio family. Thousands and thousands and thousands of messages from me and my family. And I wondered what would happen if other people who don't have this, what do they do? What do they go through when they're fighting through something and trying to experience something? And that's how this came to be. So you're coming here looking for, I would assume, something to help you as your battle moves forward, something to keep you going forward. As my mom always says, one foot in front of the other. Eventually, you're going to get there. I lost the battle this week. I'll be very honest with you. Don't expect me to have a great deal of stuff for you here this week, because I need to listen to this podcast to get myself back on track. You know, what I should do is not be here talking. What I should be doing is watching the podcast on YouTube or downloading the podcast and just seeing what it is that I need to be doing to get myself back on track. Because quite honestly, it was a tough one. But once again, while it seems that you come here expecting me to do something for you, you were the one that came through for me. So my thought was maybe, just maybe, in times like this, rather than trying to move quite so far forward in a week, we slow it down a little, we recap a little, we review and get ourselves set up right and back on track. Kind of you take one step back to take 3 steps forward. And thankfully, you have provided me with a couple of fantastic stories that make me feel like what we're doing here is worthwhile. That what we're doing here is helping us all. That what we're doing here means something great can happen in our lives. So we're not going to quit. We're just going to kind of regroup. Maybe we revamp a little bit. Maybe we remind ourselves some things that we need to be reminded of to make it possible to move forward. 1 step back, 3 steps forward. Next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next.
The Ace and TJ family is always on your phone on the Papa John's Ace and TJ app. Available at the Apple App Store, Google Play, and Amazon Marketplace.
Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
I got my ass kicked last week. Emotionally, I had my ass kicked up one side and down the other last week in a variety of ways. It happens from time to time. Here's the way it feels. It feels like emotionally you're at the bottom of the mountain and you see the snowball coming down. You see the avalanche coming, and there's A, nowhere to go, and B, no way to stop it. And you know, I've just got to stand here and just be strong enough to let the avalanche wash over me. And when it's done, I'll still be here. Knee deep in crap. Neck deep in snow and crap, but I'll still be here. And then I dig out and keep going. And here's the thing. Here's the feeling I think that I have, and I don't know, I think it happens to everybody. You wonder why. You wonder why. Why does this happen to me? And I caught myself, to be quite honest, I caught myself saying this last week. Why is this happening to me right now when it seems like I've had to experience so much? Now, here's the thing. It really doesn't have anything to do with my daughter's death. That just kind of seems to be this thing that is pervasive in my life. I learned something last week that I find kind of interesting. If it seems like I'm all over the place because these thoughts just kind of keep coming in as I'm talking. I've been trying to read some really wonderful books. They were given to me. I probably have 5, maybe 7 books that people have given me about loss and moving forward and that type of thing in your life. And I've learned it doesn't work for me, or maybe at least it doesn't work for me yet, because I find them to be depressing. Even when the subject matter is not depressing, even when it's uplifting, I find they just, I don't know, I go down some kind of rabbit hole of being so sad that my daughter's not here that I've finally realized after trying to force myself to read through, like, hey, take a break from that. Stop. It's not working for you. Whatever it is in my brain that keeps me from doing this, it's just not, it doesn't work. It makes a situation worse. And I've been really working to kind of do more reading lately. And I thought this is a great way to start. I'll give you an example. There's a book called Grieving for Dads that I kind of turned to that someone gave me, a very good friend of mine who I love dearly. Great gift. But in reading through it, there are a lot of stories things that dads have experienced who had kids die. It's too heavy. I'm not ready. I can't do that. It's 120 pages. I'm 50-something pages deep, 57 pages in, and I finally was like, look, this is not working. This one doesn't work for me. I need more time. And then I tried to read another book that's really very special, uplifting. It's more of a religious book. But again, it's all about loss. And it's like, okay, I'll come back to this later. That doesn't work for me. So, but it's not as if I've been depressed over the loss of my daughter. That just seems to always be out there. But sometimes it just happens. Did you get your ass kicked in a week? Emotionally, if you kind of divide it up, like there are personal emotions, there are professional emotions, there are personal worries, there are professional worries. I got all of them like raining down upon me this week. And you wonder why these things happen. Why does this happen to me? What have I done so bad that I just can't seem to catch a break? And maybe it's self-pity that we find ourselves in from time to time, and I believe it's certainly understandable because everybody goes through that every now and then. Now, here's the difference, is that the way I try to look at it is, hey, stop a second. I've got nothing to really feel sorry for or feel sorry for myself for. I have a wonderful wife who loves me dearly. I have a wonderful son. I have incredible friends and family and a radio family. I have all these things. I try to remind myself I have so many blessings. So let's just stop for a minute feeling sorry for myself. Let's just stop letting all of this get into every single part of your life. Just stop for a minute and take stock in the blessings that you have. Doesn't mean that you don't care. It doesn't mean that these worries go away, because they're not. Mine aren't going away at all. I wish I could get into the details of some of the stuff that I'm going through right now, but it wouldn't be fair to everybody around me if I got into sharing everything. But it's just a difficult time. It just feels like every day, every time you get a couple steps forward, it's that, to use an expression I used a minute ago, it seems like lately, for the past few weeks, every time I get 2 steps forward, I take 3 more back. It's like, okay, regroup. Here we go. 2 steps forward. Damn it. 3 more back. That's okay. Regroup. Keep going, keep going, keep going. You want to give up. You want to just say, you know what? There's got to be an easier way to do this. Here's the thing, though. Is the easier way a better way? Where do you ultimately want to be? And this is how I remind myself to keep moving forward. Is there an easier way? Oh, yeah. There's a lot easier way to do the things that I want to do in life, or there's a lot easier way to live life. There's not an easier way to do the things that I want to do in life. Where do I ultimately want to be? Where do you ultimately want to be? How do you ultimately want to live? That's the decision you have to make. Hey, sometimes maybe you reach a point where you say, you know what? I just want to slow it down a little bit. I'm going to step back and regroup some. There's nothing wrong with that. You want to be great, though, so badly sometimes. You just want to be so badly, you want to be great. You want life to carry on so badly. You want everything to be great. You want everyone to be happy, or just normal for that matter. It's tough. And sometimes we lose that battle. But try this. Take stock of, where am I? Where do I want to be? And here's something you have to ask yourself. Is it worth it to get where I ultimately want to be? Do I really want to be there? Am I really willing to pay the price to get where I need to get? If you're struggling with alcohol and drugs, let's say, where do you want to be? You want to be free from that albatross that hangs around your neck and drags you down all the time and makes your life miserable. It makes every decision you make a bad decision. So yeah, it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it to keep fighting, to keep digging. If you go a step back, make sure your next step is 2 steps forward, and you're gaining on it. You're gaining on it. You're gaining on it. Just keep gaining on it. You know, if you're in a bad relationship and ultimately you want to be in a better relationship, or you want your relationship to be better, what do you have to do to make it better? Yeah, it's absolutely worth it. If you have professional issues, do you want to be the head of your own company? Do you want to be the supervisor? Do you want that promotion? Are these things that is it worth it to you? Because if it is, you got to pay the price. Oh yeah, it's a lot easier to keep doing what you're doing. You know, to use a radio analogy, it would be a lot easier to go to a smaller market and just, hang out and do your job every day. But that's not the way, for me, that's not the problem I'm having, but I'm using it as an example. That's not the way I'm geared. I'm not geared to be that guy. I don't want to be there. I've been there. I want the next thing. I want the next challenge. I want the Ace at Large podcast to become huge with a lot of people that listen and a lot of people that come here and share their stories and ask for help and want help and, come here to just get a little pick-me-up during the week, So you got to look at what's important. What's your ultimate goal? And honestly, I'm telling myself this as I'm telling you this. This is what I needed to hear this week. I needed to hear, what is my ultimate goal? Where do you ultimately want to be? Personally, relationship-wise, professionally. And how much better will things be when you get there? And if they'll be that much better, then it's worth it. And quite honestly, it's always going to be worth it, because what do you want? You want to live a better life. You want to be happy. You want your life to be normal. You want to quit sabotaging yourself. It's hard, man. It sucks. Sometimes we get our ass kicked. More than once. Sometimes you're the guy, like I said, standing at the bottom of the mountain, looking up. You're like, oh, here we go. Look at this snowball coming down the hill, headed straight for me. But it's worth it, and it will be worth it when you get to where you want to be. And look at it this way. What are your options? Because if we don't get there, God, wouldn't you hate to not get there and then be stuck knowing, I bet I could have. I bet I could have gotten there. 10 years from now, when your life is completely falling apart, even worse than it is now because you can't kick your drug or alcohol problem, you got to sit back and realize that you've lost everything and everyone you ever cared about. And then you got to realize, man, it didn't have to be this way. I could have done a better job. I could have worked harder. There's more that I could have done. That's the thing with me. I never want to say, you know what? I could have done more. I could have done this, because then you're second guessing. Then you don't know. Well, you do know. What you do know is you didn't give it your all. You didn't try your hardest. You let it beat you. Whatever it is, you let it beat you. Don't let it beat you. Decide where you want to be. Decide if it's worth it or not. It is. And then just keep digging. That's all there is to it. I mean, again, I'm reminding myself of that right now as much as I am you. Matter of fact, I'm probably not telling you anything that's helpful at all, but I'm helping myself a lot as we go through the process. Remember what we've talked about before. Lose the battle, win the war. And it's always in a singular thought process. You can lose the battle, but win the war. Well, sometimes you're going to lose battles. You know. You look at the best NBA teams of all time. Nobody's ever been undefeated. NFL teams, one has ever gone through an entire season and won the Super Bowl undefeated. One. Only one in all these years. One. You know. You're not going to win. You're going to lose more than one battle is my point. You're going to lose more than one game. But if you go 14-2 in the regular season and win the Super Bowl, that's a whole hell of a lot better than being 16-0 in the regular season, winning every playoff game, and then losing the Super Bowl. You know why? Because if you lose the Super Bowl, you're not the champion. I would much rather be 13-3. Yeah, I'll take 3 losses and ultimately being the world champion over no losses until the championship game. By the way, if you're new to the Ace at Large podcast, I like to use sports analogies a lot because it's a lot easier for me to process. Lose the battles, win the war. I lost every battle last week. And here's the thing. One of them was just with myself. I lost my temper with myself out of frustration. And nobody's noticed this because today's the first day I haven't worn a hat. I've got a scar on my head to prove it right now. Not proud of it. You want honesty? There's honesty. I don't even think you can notice on the camera because I've kind of kept my head turned to the right a little bit. But the right side of my head, Todd, can you see that right there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You know what that comes from? Well, and there's another one here. It's on this side, but it's kind of healed. It wasn't as bad. That just comes from slamming my head against the door twice, just out of sheer anger and frustration with my life. So there's full disclosure. There's me bearing my soul to you, my humiliating, aggravating soul. You know. But like I said, if you're 13-3 and you win the Super Bowl, you're still, by God, the world champion. You win. That's all that matters. Win. Win the war. Thankfully, you have given me so many cool messages that have picked me up and kept me going. And there's one in particular I wanted to share, a couple of them that I may share if we have the time, because they just really have meant a lot to me. It touched me in a really special way, and I hope that you'll see something in them that will touch you and make you want to pick up and go do something maybe you've been putting off doing for a while. Next.
There's more of the new Ace at Large podcast next. Welcome back to the new Ace at Large podcast.
So I just wanted to share something. A couple of weeks ago on the Ace at Large podcast, I was telling you the story of how we have got to let memories fuel our desire to be better in the long run. Because we all have them, those good, positive memories. And I was telling you the story about as I was literally sitting there making notes for that podcast, sitting outside, smoking a cigar, I was listening to this sound that was happening around the corner in my neighborhood. Ting, ting, ting. And it's that sound I've heard so many times in my life, thousands of times, not just from playing baseball and practicing baseball, but from coaching my kids and sitting in the backyard with a bucket of balls, sitting on an empty bucket and just tossing them out there. And ting, ting. It's like the greatest. I love that sound. And I got a really nice message from a guy, and he said I could say his name, but I won't say his name, but he's super cool. And I'll try to get through this. Let's just put it this way. He said, "Hey man, sorry that this message is going to be so long. This was by far the best podcast you've ever done. I applaud you, sir." Well, thank you. I really didn't mean to read that part. Gone through a lot in the last year. I'm kind of condensing part of this. My divorce will be final in a month or so. I lost 40 pounds in the first 2 months. Couldn't eat. Uncontrollable crying. Went to church every time the doors opened. Went back to the gym. Got a great job with the best company benefits. All of that. Still depressed. My first Christmas without my family. I couldn't even listen to music. Every song reminded me. I finally listened to the commercials and downloaded the Ace and TJ app. I've listened for over 20 years every day. So I got some earbuds and I listened to y'all. My son will be 14 this month. He plays on 2 baseball teams. I enjoy going to his practice and games as much as I can. They are few and far between. He only lived with me for his first year, but I am daddy. I'm here as much as possible. He has his own phone now, and he asked me to come help him practice because COVID has stopped his ability to play games. I spent 3 hours just playing catch. I had him a bucket of balls. We took turns hitting, gathering a bucket, hitting some more. It was the best time I've had all year. This message is something that we all know. But when someone you respect says it, as I'm watching it happen in real life, it makes a big impact. It did, and something clicked. He said, quote, "You could half-ass your way to almost making it, or ... end quote. Thanks, man. Man. So you're welcome and thank you. Because that got me through a couple days last week. When I was just like, the easiest thing right now to do would just be, I'm not going to say that. That's an overreaction. I would never have done that. But listen to this guy. He's like, he lost 40 pounds in the first 2 months. Okay, this is going to sound terrible, but right after while I was going through all the stuff with my divorce, which lasted over a couple of years. So for a couple of years, I was hiding out. Nobody really knew that I wasn't living at home, blah, 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 blah. But man, I got in great shape because I lost a lot of weight. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying trying to turn a negative into a positive. Uncontrollable crying, check. Went to church every time the doors opened, went back to the gym, got a great job, still depressed. Check, check, and check. Everything was rolling along great professionally. You're still like, this sucks. And you can't figure out why. It's because you're not in a good space. Because this thing, whatever, it just saddles you down. But there you go. Honestly, I'd forgotten I even said that. Made it up on the spot. You can half-ass your way to almost making it, or what? You can make it. You can bust your ass and make it. You could end up in the place you need to be in. So if you take anything away from today's Ace at Large podcast, here it is. Just figure out where you want to be and then decide if it's worth it. And the answer is yes. It's always worth it. It's always worth it to be better for yourself. It's always worth it to be better for those around you. It's always worth it to be better for your family, for your friends, for the people you come in contact with, for society. It's always worth it to be better. It's not easy to get there sometimes. It's tough. It's better for everyone around you. But most importantly, it's better for you. It's the best thing I could ever tell you. is to remind you that one day you will tell your story of how you've overcome what you're going through right now. And it will become someone else's survival guide. I welcome your comments, good and bad, whatever. By the way, I'm supposed to remember that I never remember to do this, but I'm supposed to remember to ask you to, like and subscribe to the podcast. I forget about that all the time. Todd's laughing now because every week someone goes, you didn't tell him to like and subscribe. Damn it, I forgot. So like and subscribe the podcast if you would. Put a favorable comment up there, whatever. But any questions, comments, love to hear from you. On Facebook, it's David Ace Cannon. There are two of those. I know it's kind of confusing, but you're really looking for the one of picture of me with a baseball cap on, I think. One's for music, one's this other. Our Twitter, Instagram, @AceAtLarge. Snapchat, @AceAtLarge. You can message me anytime. But again, never forget that. It's always worth it. Are you going to be better? We're going to make it through. This week has already been better than the last few weeks have been because I decided I'm going to try to pay more attention to what I'm doing. I'm going to stop slamming my head into doors out of frustration and ending up with a scar that I've got to cover up that you've now seen. I'm going to try. I've said that 1,000 times and heretofore been unsuccessful. And hopefully somehow me sharing with you what I'm trying to overcome is becoming your survival guide in some weird way. A very weird way. We'll see you next week.
This is the new Ace at Large podcast. The new Ace at Large podcast will be back next Thursday.